Hello, hello, and welcome to Practical Magic for Entrepreneurs, doing the impossible. I'm really happy that you're here. My name is Sage Lee, and I want to welcome you personally to this webinar. And you might be wondering, well, what in the world is all this magic business about anyway? Right? You probably have done fine without magic in your life so far, or without thinking you have magic. And there's no guarantee that magic will get you anything that you want faster. Maybe that's what you're thinking. And maybe you're thinking, well, who is this Sage guy and why should I listen to him about magic? And I'll tell you all those things in just a moment. But first I want to make sure that you're on the right webinar. So you're on the right webinar if you have a business and you've gotten tons of business education, but something still is not quite working in your business. It's hard to put your finger on it, but something's still not working. Maybe you are stuck at a level you can't get past whatever's keeping you there. Maybe it seems like somebody else seems to be holding the keys to the way things work. And maybe you're doing all the right things, but you still can't make some of your life and business work for you. Well, plus, you might just want some magic, right? This is a particularly beautiful piece of magic, and it was taken right down the street from my home. I live in a really magical location, which I'll tell you about in just a little bit. This is me. There is a story that I want to tell you, but first I want to say that the most important thing about your business is not found in your business. The most important thing in your business is your escape from the mundane world and your acceptance of the invisible world, and finally, your acceptance that you can actually do something about the invisible world. So I need to give you a little bit of basic education about magic. And this basic education is stuff that people used to know over 400 years ago and all the way back through the millennia. And we basically decided that we wanted to forget it about 350 years ago. Now, it used to be that only the wealthy or the priests or the people that really knew, that had some pull in the society could know this information. But things have changed now, and all of that knowledge that used to be available to just a very few is now available to everyone, if you have eyes to see it and ears to hear it. Now, a lot of people think that magic is like legerdemain, and legerdemain is the word that we use for hand magic, like sleight of hand, like card tricks, like the eye being fooled into something else, right? In stage magic, the large gesture hides the small gesture where the real action is happening. In real magic, we don't want that to happen. We want things to be completely open and transparent, and we want to change the outcome of the future. Now, let me show you something about the science of magic. Arthur C. Clarke had 3 laws, and we're only concerned right now with the third one, which says that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Now, any sentence that has the verb is in the middle of it, you can usually exchange the position of the subject and the predicate in the system. So why don't we do that? And we'll then say magic is indistinguishable from any sufficiently advanced technology. Well, that's good. because our subject is magic, where subject is not technology, it's magic. But let's take another look and say that anything that's indistinguishable from someone else or from something else might as well be the same thing, right? If we can't distinguish the difference between one thing and another with our senses, with anything that we have, then it might as well be the same thing. So that means if we take that part out, then we end up with the statement, magic is advanced technology. Now, I'm going to spend the next few minutes telling you why this is not such a radical idea. In fact, I think by the end of this video, you'll end up agreeing with me that the technology of magic is very powerful if we know where to look for magic and we know what magic really means. So I actually want to define magic, and I want to define magical tools and what they mean. And finally, I want to say what I think a wizard is, because it's no surprise to you that I have a school for wizards, right? So I should have some ideas about that. So let me just continue by saying, I think you're a wizard. Yeah, despite what you might think, I think you are a wizard. And by the time you get done with all 3 of the videos in this series, like when you get through this webinar, I think you'll be pretty convinced as well. So let me tell you a little bit about me. Now, I might have something to teach you about wizardry and magic. One of the things that's always been true about me is that I'm a maker. Ever since I was 3 or 4 years old, I have made things, and sometimes these things were practical, and sometimes they were impractical. Read art, right? Art is rarely considered to be practical, but it's beautiful. Now, as you'll learn, creativity is one of the primary reasons we exist on the planet. Now, when I was a kid, I drew things all the time. I drew on paper, I cut things out of paper, I sculpted things. I drew this giant mural on my wall when I was a teenager. And little did I know that all of this creativity was actually preparing me for an apprenticeship in wizardry. Now, my parents didn't know what to do with me because I was an Energizer bunny of creating things. I didn't have enough allowance money to order these big blacklight posters for my room. So I would look at the tiny little drawings of the blacklight posters in the catalog, and I would use my blacklight tempera paints and create my own. Now, this was the first inkling that I might have some wizarding abilities, not to mention artistic abilities. But the important thing here is not that I was able to create these posters, because I think many people would be able to do that. The important thing was that I wanted something. I didn't have the normal means to get it, so I just simply created what I wanted with a new and different set of materials. Now, don't worry, you don't have to be an artist or a maker of any kind. All you need to do is just keep an open mind about how creatively you show up in the world, and I'll tell you more. So as I got older, I began to notice that I had this ability to visualize things and then have them come into being. So I'd stare into a candle flame. I'd make these little rituals up, I'd stare into a candle flame and I'd imagine the face of the person that I was supposed to meet. And sure enough, like clockwork, I would meet them a few days later. Now, remember this, because part of the manifestation process is consciously forgetting about what you've done and allowing the unconscious to sort your world for you. But more about that in a minute. I want to tell you how I manifested a home before I was 30 years old, when I was not working at a job and was on medical disability. So in my 20s, I made this pronouncement that I wanted to be a homeowner by the time I was 30. Now, it was the late 80s, and this was a time when, young people like me were like, okay, a home was something that I just couldn't dream of owning. My parents were in no position to finance me. I didn't have any money saved up, but I was unstoppable. I called a real estate agent, had her show me houses, and then she dutifully did the math and said, okay, you don't have enough money to own a house. And that's okay, I said, I'll just look at houses anyway. and I'm sure that she thought I was nuts. And then I came into a lot of money, quite by accident, if you will. And if you want to know the story about how that happened, you can listen to it on my TED Talk. All you need to do is Google my vertical gift. The talk's only 6 minutes long, and it will definitely inspire you. And because of this, I was able to have enough money to put down on the house that I wanted. It suddenly showed up out of nowhere with all the paperwork done on it. It was in escrow. I just had to plop down the money and walk into it. It was quite astonishing. So in addition to the practical aspect of magic, which really has enabled me to do almost any job that I want to have in the world, and by the way, be successful at it. And despite the fear-mongering of some of my dearest friends and associates, now I know they were just trying to help me when they said, that's impossible, but fortunately for me, I never believed them. Right? I want to give you the cues and clues and information to have an impossible life as well, like an impossibly good life. Now, I want to give you some definitions so that you understand how my world works. So first, a wizard. Now, a wizard is a person of either gender who is living their life the way life was designed to be lived, with a balanced feeling of power and with the knowledge and skills to do things others might think impossible. All right, more on this impossible thing in a second, because that's the title of this webinar, right? Magic is a set of tools and techniques that wizards can use to influence probability in the direction of what they desire. Now, when wizards do this effectively, it can seem like they are doing the impossible. But wizards are living by the same universal laws as everyone else. Now, this is really, really important. Now, it is one of the laws of the universe that the human mind has the ability to influence probability in the direction of our desires. Now, it's one of the unique things about the human mind. Later on, I'm going to give you some of the principles that wizards live by, and you'll want to write those down. And the reason I'm doing this is because learning to become a wizard is not about learning magic tricks. Now, what most people consider to be magic, like I said before, is just sleight of hand or misdirection that fools you into thinking that something is true when it's not. Now, true wizardry is exactly the opposite of that. We can use some of the same techniques that magicians use, but learning to live in harmony with the laws of nature and the universe, including all the natural forces on the planet, is what will give you actually the power that you desire. Now, as a hobby, I track modern scientific discoveries and I compare them to the wisdom that metaphysical science has been providing for not just decades, but millennia. And what I've discovered is that modern science is just beginning to discover the very things that metaphysical science, science beyond the physical, has been telling us for years. Now, one of the most famous and interesting is the notion of fractals. So fractals essentially are self-similar regardless of scale. Now, what that essentially means is that if you zoomed in on a coastline in Google Maps, or if you zoom in on this fractal, then it's going to look similar to what you're seeing here. It's self-similar at various scales, right? Now, this is related to a teaching in the ancient world called as above, so below. So fully, it's what is that which is above is similar to that which is below. That which is above is similar to that which is below. So you'll notice Oh dear, I've lost my place. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. I know this material like the back of my hand. So fractals show us that the invisible world, like here we are, as above, so below. One of the other things that I do is I make a little hobby out of taking pictures that could be confused at different scales. So what is the scale of this picture? Is this a giant plane? Is it a tiny rock? It's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? Now, one of the ways to tell is that that's beach sand in the front. So you can tell by the scale of the sand on the cliffs kind of how big this is. So the other thing that you want to know is that there are correspondences to this invisible world, right? We not only can implore the invisible world, but we can actually control the invisible world to some extent, and we can certainly understand how it operates. And how it operates, if as above is similar to below, right? If above is considered similar to below, even though the invisible world isn't above, it's actually just right under our noses, but invisible, then we can say that we study the invisible world by studying the world that exists right here, the world that we can see that's right underneath our noses. So so magic is actually, like I said, powerful technology. And the truth is, it's actually really rare to find somebody who has actually mastered this technology. The first thing that you need to remember here is that all the power that you need is right here. Like, there's nothing else that you need other than what you have already. So check these things out. First of all, do you want to learn how to run your business ecologically and live your life the way it was meant to be lived? Like, does this sound appealing to you? Because we all know that the way that, you know, the way that we've been living on this planet is not sustaining, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to be an ecology buff or an ecology nut. Ecological just means as part of the system, right? And we were meant to be magical beings capable of doing nearly impossible things, or things that people believe to be impossible. So do you want to activate your love power and your magnetism? And when you do that, you get to create a connection more powerful than any fear that you might have. So this is about power, right? Is this what you want? Do you want more power? And do you want to be so empowered and so sure of your purpose that you can serve your world without hesitating one bit? Now, also, you want to be able to harness your creativity and your curiosity. Now, if you think about it, our creativity is what separates us from the other beings, right? We can imagine something in our minds, and that thing can come to be. I can say, I want to bake a cake, and suddenly, you know, 2 hours later, there's a cake. And I've had to do some things to get that cake to happen, but you can be sure that not very many other creatures in the universe have that kind of power. Also, you want to be able to navigate the terrain of this invisible world to get what you want in this one, right? You need the map of the invisible world. So remember, the wisdom and the power that you need to manifest everything is already here. You don't have to go looking for it. I've collected it, right? And it's existed here in plain sight for quite some time. So it's actually really compelling to act like everyone else. And what almost everyone else does is just pretend that they're powerless, right? Oh, my business isn't doing well, I'm powerless. My life is, you know, this way and that way, and it's the circumstances. It's not anything that I'm doing, it's the circumstances. I have no power. I have no magical power or otherwise. Or sometimes you're at the limit of your actual power that you know about, and what you need is to step into your magical power, but you don't know how to do it. And what's the cost of living like this on the other side of the glass? So if you want to live your life the way it was meant to be lived, which is, you know, if I put myself in the shoes of this kid, it's actually out there throwing this football around, not staying inside wishing that that would be so. And for you, it might be serving the people that you're here to serve without hesitation, with ultimate creativity, navigating the magical world the way it was meant to be navigated. So I use these magical tools that I teach every day to bring my gifts to life. But here's the secret, right? Shh, don't tell anyone, right? I was reluctant to teach anything about magic because part of me would say, you can't do that. People aren't interested in magic or the invisible. Like, it's too frou-frou. No one will believe you. And then another voice would come out of the blue and say, look, this stuff works. Your whole life is an example of how this works. Why aren't you teaching people how to do this? It's your duty. And then I would talk back to the voice. Don't ever do that, because it makes you seem crazy walking down the street. But I would talk back to the voice and I'd say, can't you see I'm busy? I've got things to do. But apparently spirit is stronger than me. Big surprise, right? I mean, it's surprising to me, but not to everyone else. So finally, I just said yes. I said yes, and the School for Wizards was born. And in order to do that, all I did was to say yes to the divine paradox of my life. So this fellow's walking up a continuously up staircase. How is that possible? He is living a paradox. The round dice are not only a paradise, but they're a paradox because they will never land on any one number. And this card, which is a card from the Sage Tarot deck, is actually the card of adjustment. And there's a little paradox in that in the lower left-hand corner called the Devil's Pitchfork. Now, your whole life is a paradox. Your whole life is a collection of opposites, just like this. The round dice, the ever up continuous staircase, the Devil's Pitchfork, which seems to have 3 ends on one end and 2 on the other. And a paradox doesn't demand to be reconciled. A paradox demands just to exist. And you can honor your paradox by stepping away from this mundane world and starting to use your mind and body like they were built to be used. Now here I'm going to tell you, in the School for Wizards, we do wacky things. We study spells and potions and incantations and rituals, but we use their more common names when we study them. And those common names are language patterns, personal intention, prayers, art, and ceremonies. And I designed the whole School for Wizards to address this paradox. And it allows you to learn the wizarding skills that you should have been taught when you were a child, but you never were. So don't drift back to the Muggle world of ordinariness, please. Because there are rules and laws and practices and ways of living that have been laid out for thousands of years. Now, these keys to wizardry have been actually buried in plain sight. They don't even have to be dug up. But they're only available to those who are open to them, and again, with eyes to see and ears to hear. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit later in the webinar how you can join up with me to learn everything you need to know about reclaiming your wizardhood. And like I said earlier, wizards are equally men and women. So women, reclaim your wizardhood too. So let me tell you about some of the principles of being a wizard. You don't have to wait. You can actually put these into place right now. So first, everything is alive. Now it's easy to think everything is alive when you see these images of the formations of galaxies and suns and stars. And so-called primitive cultures were able to believe that the planet and the stars were alive. Now they had the right idea. And the soil and the sky and the water, well, that's a little bit harder, isn't it? But here's what I would like you to do. I would like you to formulate a question, and I would like this to be a vexing question, a question that you have not been able to answer in your life and business. And I want you to carry that question with you. If you have to write it down on a piece of paper, you do that. And then I want you to go outside, and I don't want you to just go outside in the city street, because even though buildings are alive and concrete is alive, it's much easier to sense this aliveness when you're in nature. So find a place where you can go out into nature. You know, sometimes it's just walking around a bay, or, you know, just outside your home office, or just outside your office. You'll find some beautiful place to be. And what I would like you to do is just notice what's around you and think that all of these things have more wisdom than you. Just for the moment, right? You can get your hubris back, you can get your muscle back, but just for a few minutes, think that you're the dimmest bulb in the rack, and that all of these things have amazing wisdom to teach you. Now, I just did this at a workshop this last weekend, and people came back in with reams of information that was completely useful to them in dealing with their businesses. It was true wisdom that had actually been communicated by putting themselves in the position of the one that knows the least, and depending on the rocks and stones and trees and water and sky and clouds and the island that was out on the bay, to give them wisdom. So I invite you to do that. And then be prepared for the onslaught of wisdom that will come. Some people have a lot of things that come to them, you know, like everything's talking to them. Other people just have a profound experience with one thing. Don't try to predict what it's going to be. Just go out and do it. All right, the second principle of being a wizard that is important for you to know is act as if you're responsible for everything that happens to you. Now, this might not be true, right? But go with me for a moment and imagine how much more power to change a situation you would have if you acted as if you were the one responsible for your situation. Now, here is another exercise for you to do. Whenever something terrible happens, right? And these things happen, like unexpected things happen in your business all the time. So next time something like that happens, instead of asking questions like, why did this happen to me? Or what's wrong with these people? or whatever other questions you normally ask in a situation like that, I want you to say this. What did I do to create this experience or this situation? What did I do to create this? What did I do to create this? And this returns the power back to you. If you blame the circumstances or other people, you're giving your power away. So this is definitely a wizard's principle. Third, and I've said this before, all the power that ever was or will be is here now. We use the same stuff that God and the devil use. And there's a great moment in Napoleon Hill's book that was recently published called Outwitting the Devil. It was published many decades posthumously because no one knew what to do with this book while he was alive. It's a conversation with the devil. And in it, he asks the devil, well, how come your enemy, meaning God, doesn't just vanquish you? Why doesn't your enemy just vanquish you? And he says, well, because we both have the same abilities to get power. And so do you, he says to Napoleon Hill. So do you. As a human, you have the same material to work with as God or the devil. So there's no exercise here for you, but there is a kind of mind-bending concept here that all the, if you can just get this, if you can repeat it 5 times a day until you get it, all the power that ever was or will be is here now, then you get that it's possible for you to really accomplish anything that you want in your life. Now, fourth, and this is something that is not well known, right? I mean, Napoleon Hill knew this, decades ago, the thing about all using the same stuff, but there is a world of creation, a path and an order to manifestation. There are 4 worlds of creation, and if you don't follow the steps of this path of creation, your project will not move forward. So creation happens from divine consciousness, from that spark of inspiration that you get. That's your first world. You need to go, oh, I think I'd like to bake a cake. Suddenly it comes to your mind, unbidden, I want to bake a cake. Or, maybe it's somebody's birthday and I want to bake a cake. Well, right now, all you have is the idea of the cake. And the second world is the world of choosing, the world of cosmic and collective consciousness, the world of, I call it the candy store. This is where if you're building a cake, you go, well, what kind of cake do I want? Do I want a German chocolate cake? Do I want a carrot cake? Do I want a red velvet cake? And you decide the kind of cake you want. And you have to do that before you do anything else. Now, this is so but simple, right? It's obvious that this is true, but we rarely think about this in terms of how we actually get anything done. And some of us just want to go from the idea to the implementation and leave out this middle step, which is being really specific about what you want. The third world is the world of self-consciousness and planning. So if you're baking a cake, this world will consist of getting your ingredients together and planning and making sure that you have a kitchen to bake in. And the baking of the cake doesn't actually happen until the first egg gets broken in the bowl or the flour gets measured or whatever. Like there's a little bit of fuzziness here because, well, is looking in the recipe book, part of that last section, which is the world of action, consciousness. But you'll see that most of the issues that you have in your business, if you're stuck somewhere with a big project, you can go back and go, oh, well, was this conceived? Like, am I even headed in the right direction, right? Then you go back up to the top. Or am I headed in the right direction, but I just haven't chosen the right project or the right expression of this? And you go back to the second world. Or have I got a good idea about what I'm doing and I'm really being really specific about it, but I've just done crap planning about it? Or finally, sometimes you got great planning and poor execution. So you know what world to go back to. So there's a path of creation in the School for Wizards, and we actually do that. This last weekend was a path of creation weekend. And the people that were there were working through the blocks in their way of creating. And in fact, I had them write down on a piece of paper 4 things that they wanted to manifest. One was something simple, quick, and easy, and almost everyone had gotten their simple, quick, and easy manifestation done by the time the weekend was ending. And yet on Sunday, before the last day it had even happened, Gary came in and he said, well, I have to get a new impossible. I said, because one of the 4 things was something that the writer considered impossible. And he said, yeah, I did my impossible. I already did it this morning. So this is the power of the path of creation, the power of magic. And understanding this path of creation allows you to create anything you want whenever you want it. Okay? Anything you want whenever you want it, right? So this spark, this divine spark that's passing between the hand of God and the hand of Adam here is that path of creation. So the second path that we study in the School for Wizards is the path of personal power. Now this is the path of spells. And spells are different from incantations or prayers because incantations get sent to a higher order, and the power of spells is that they're designed to change the path of probability. And spells are addressed neither to another person nor to the divine, although they are often addressed to an aspect of the divine, which has a name. I'm not going to tell you what the name is right now because I don't want to confuse you. But there is a way to direct energy toward that part. And this path, the path of personal power, results in techniques to get clear and fast guidance on any topic. Any topic. And in this path of personal power, we're also going to study why magic actually works, right? So that it doesn't seem like such a mystery. And then this is where we learn all sorts of foolproof structures to create magic that works to get what you want. And there are things like sigil magic, where you create something beautiful, stare at it for a while, and it brings to you what you desire. Astonishing, but true. So the third path is the path of prayer or incantations. And this is actually the picture of someone singing or chanting. There's actually a lost way of praying that we did some of this weekend in the path of creation as well. And this lost way of praying was taken out of scriptures about 2,000 years ago. It's just taken out of all the documents because it was considered, I suppose, too dangerous or not something that the common people should know. But they've now done scientific research, and remember, I'm a little science junkie. Science research has now been done on the effectiveness of prayer, and recently on the kind of prayer that's the most effective. So learning this path of prayer, you learn that what you must do is make a model for what you want. and that you, and there are several other steps to it as well, which include blessing and beauty and hard lessons, right? It's not all puppies and kittens, is it? So also on this path, on the path of prayer or incantations, you'll learn how to protect yourself when you stir up powerful forces in the universe. And there's one more model that I want to make you aware of, and this is the ritual model. And rituals have been around for tens of thousands of years, right? We're just beginning to understand them and their power. And the part of the power lies in their structure. And that structure is about creating the model of what you want in order that you get what you want. And in order to create a model, you have to do something such as spend some time creating that model. You spend some time looking at that model, and the brain fills in. So it's like this. If you are a cave person 300,000 or 200,000 years ago, and you have created the bison in your sacred cave, and you have the special juniper that burns with a flickering so that it creates a sensation that the animals are moving in the back of the cave. And let's say you have a ritual where you throw the spear at the bison, right? Which seems alive to you. It's moving as if it's alive, right? You've created a model and you've tossed that stick, tossed that spear at the bison. So you've actually created a physical model, right? So you can actually take the spear and toss it at the bison. You created a mental model because you're wearing grooves in the neurology for where that spear is going to go when you throw it. It's like beyond rehearsing, right? You know, I'm sure they rehearsed a lot in the daylight, but this is about creating the mental model of actually hitting the mark with that spear on that bison. And finally, you've created a spiritual model because there's a connection between the spirit of you and the spirit of the bison that is making its giveaway. So there are these powerful physical, mental, and spiritual and emotional models, right? So emotion, if you just consider that the emotion goes over the whole thing, right? Instead of adding to this list, emotion goes over the whole thing. And that creates a powerful ritual. So the other thing that I want to mention is that there's a five-fold structure for every ritual. That is the way that we put rituals together, and it can be used in any business. In fact, you can have a huge amount of power in your business world by creating every business meeting to have this five-point structure. Now, what I'm going to offer you is that I will send you this five-fold structure of every ritual if you would like to have it. You know, it will be beneficial to any meeting that you want to have, and I will send you this five-fold ritual structure whenever you want it. All you need to do is send an email to sage@theschoolforwizards.com, and it will be on its way to you within 24 hours. So the final thing is correspondences. Now, studying the invisible world means that we have to have a model for the invisible plain thing right here on Earth, right? These relationships between the normative world and the invisible world are called correspondences. And I'm going to lead you on a little lesson in how they work in a little bit. A very, very short lesson. And let me remind you at this point that The magical teachings that I'm sharing with you are the same teachings that people like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, King Solomon, Greek philosophers like Plato and Pythagoras, and leaders throughout time and history have used to create successful lives using the same wizard skills that are available to all of us, right? They didn't study this because they were great. They studied it to become great. And when you look at great people, they're really just very much like you and me. And there are usually a couple of things on the surface that are different, but what's really different is who they are at the deepest level. And that is the level that I'm calling you to in the School for Wizards. It doesn't take extraordinary intellect. It doesn't take extraordinary compassion. And it doesn't take extraordinary physical strength to be a wizard. What it does take is a commitment to learning what needs to be learned in order to engage your magical powers. So I'm going to teach a little bit about the correspondences, and remember a little earlier I reminded you about as above, so below. And for hundreds of years, the tarot has been a sort of pictorial dictionary of the secrets of the Kabbalah, the secrets of the ancients. And it's even said that a human being on a deserted island can learn everything she needs to know about the world so long as she has a pack of tarot cards. Now, there are many correspondences with each card in the deck, and some are with like the sense of smell. There's a scent associated with each of the tarot trump cards, some with letters associated with them, some with an astrological sign or element. And each of these correspondences creates a puzzle that you get to put together. And the correspondences in the tarot are literally keys to understanding the invisible world and how it operates. Now, the reason you should care about how the invisible world operates is because the invisible world is what gives us everything here. Now, I'm going to choose a card right in the middle of the major arcana, or trump card in the deck. And with this card, we're about halfway through the study of the major arcana of the tarot, right? We've got 0 to 10 before it and 11 to 21 after it. And adjustment then sits right in the middle of the deck. And it's balancing not only the items on the scale, but with the set of trump cards as well. And there comes a time in business and in life when you just need to pay attention to the ideals of justice and do what is for the greatest good of all. Okay? When you draw this card, it's usually a signal that you need to pay attention to the adjusting force of justice. Now, I want you to notice that there's no figure that appears in this card. There's just a set of symbols that can assist you in making judgments or adjustments. There's a scale sitting on top of this transparent cube, and on one side of the scale is this glowing light. And on the other, this white feather. And inside the transparent cube sits this mysterious and impossible shape that we looked at earlier, and a sword that rests upon the inside of the cube and casts an odd-looking shadow. Now, the scales are the scales of the judgment of the Egyptian goddess Maat, M-A-A-T. And Maat judged the souls of the dead before either admitting them to the afterlife or feeding them to a hungry crocodile. Now, only if your soul was as light as a feather would you be granted admission to the afterlife. Now, this encourages us to keep it light, especially when judging ourselves or others. And the sword and its shadow now, if you look at that, form a right angle triangle, which is the basis for the Pythagorean theorem, and this refers also to Pythagoras, one of the grandfathers of Western mysticism. And Pythagoras wasn't just a mathematician, but a really well-rounded philosopher and adept of the natural sciences. And this is an indicator that justice, or the adjustment that we seek when a problem has come up, is well-rounded and informed on all sides. So the card number is also the number 11. So 11 is a prime number. No other numbers can be multiplied together to get it. And it's unique like every situation in which adjustment is required. If you add the digits together, you get 2. And 2 is the number of the High Priestess card. You don't know about that yet, but I'll just tell you, she is the librarian of the collective unconscious, right? The High Priestess can help us here because we often need to consult the intuitive realms to make the right decision. So the zodiac or planetary sign associated with this card is Libra. And almost everything about Libra is about balance and regulation. Libra is associated with the autumnal equinox, the time when the days and nights are equal in length. It's also associated with the kidneys, with the organs in the body that regulate the system by filtering toxins. This is much like the filtering of experiences in life so that balance can be maintained in the living system. So this strange shape inside the cube, right, which could also stand for the cube of truth, is called the devil's pitchfork illusion, as I said before. And it's an impossible shape to build in the real world, but it's possible to draw. Now, the devil's pitchfork can indicate on a paradox. On the one hand, it's a shape that cannot exist in the real world, and on the other, it exists in an ideal world. No adjustment on the earthly plane is perfect. Like an ideal shape that can be conceptualized but not touched, justice is an imperfect science. So the question to ask when justice is called for is, what can I do for the greatest good of all? Okay, that's just a little introduction to the kind of correspondences that we can draw from, and you can already begin to see that this can help you in your business. So I have something that I would love to invite you to, and it's something very, very simple. How would you like to spend 5 days steeped in magic? 5 days enabling you to show up with specific practices and exercises that will deliver wealth for you. Beginning your transformation into a person who's capable of practicing magic. A connection to everything that's profound. And you do this in a safe place, in a safe community of fellow wizards, right? You get to connect with ancient ways of connecting with each other, right? If you want to learn real wizard skills that you can use with incredible joy, right? This is not about black magic, not at all. If you want a deeper connection with the source, but you just don't know how to get it, then come hang out with us for 5 days. It's happening in Los Angeles. I'm flying in 3 chefs from around the world, one from Seattle, one from San Diego, and one from Portland, Maine. And they're amazing chefs who will serve you amazing gourmet vegetarian meals for the entire 5 days. You come in on Monday, and we meet you at the airport with a shuttle, and we shuttle you up to Manzanita Village, where you get you get checked into your room, and we meet for the first time the following morning, and we do a little exercise at 8 o'clock. We meet together with each other at 9 o'clock. And we prepare. We learn ritual, we learn prayer, we learn incantation, we learn spells, and we learn that we are going to go out into the forest. This retreat center is on 80,000 acres of public land. So we have a great deal of wilderness at our disposal. And one of the things that's very true is that we need an abiding relationship with nature in order to fully and truly mature. So we give you that. We put you out into the forest for 24 hours to deal with yourself. And then we bring you back and we let you decompress, because it would be unfair to just send you home right after that. And finally, we do a great feast on the last day, along with a ritual celebrating the midpoint between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So if you want to do this, the only way to do it right now is to send an email to sage@theschoolforwizards.com and tell me that you would like more information about the Vision Quest retreat. More information about the Vision Quest retreat. And I will give it to you. And here's the thing. I've gone through the thousands of old tomes and books to figure out what it is that you need to learn, right? I've already done all that work for you. You don't have to read a bunch of moldy old volumes, because I've translated it for you. And the thing to remember is that you're absolutely with magic at the limits of the conscious mind. You have learned when you were a child to filter out the important stuff that actually constitutes magic, right? You might have had an invisible friend, but you lost your invisible friend when you allowed the adults to convince you that it was no longer appropriate, right? How many of us could use our invisible friend at this moment? So magical tools will help you reveal the invisible world and change probability in the direction of your desire. So email me at sage@theschoolforwizards.com and ask about the Vision Quest retreat, and I'll send you information and an application for you to join us. And with that, it looks like we are almost out of time. I've really enjoyed this time with you, and I'm going to just stop the sharing for a moment so that you can see me and who I am. There we go. Hi. I'm really glad that you were able to sit through this with me and learn a little bit about magic and learn some actual tools and techniques that you can use in your world right now. And I would love for you to join me on the Vision Quest retreat. If you want to send me an email at sage@theschoolforwizards.com, I would be really, really excited to send you information about the Vision Quest retreat. All right. Bye for now. All is well. Okay. Bye.